Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Radcast on the topic of implementation, the fourth stage of radical collective intelligence. We could say fourth and final. I'm very happy to be joined by my colleague Michael, who's in Thailand. How are you doing out there, Michael?
Doing well, Jamin. Good to be here.
Great to have you. All right. So implementation, this is a big topic. Let's just make it a real dialectic back and forth. Let's just keep our microphones unmuted, I would actually suggest. And yeah, just jump in anytime. One of the first things I wanted to say about it is that implementation impacts all the other stages. It doesn't just impact, it's impacted by, it's in dialectic with. So, whenever an idea is conceived of, just like in the idea tree, in the brainstorming tree, it asks how, what are the ways in which this goal can be achieved? So from the very get-go, all the way through, not just design of the solution, but design of its implementation. It's staged, phased implementation. Again, are you gonna, if the solution is to generate a whole bunch of widgets, are you gonna invest in a highly automated factory to build those widgets as quickly and cheaply as possible, and invest a lot upfront in order to generate gazillions of widgets at very low incremental cost? Or are you going to make a small investment up front first and generate expensive widgets in lower volume? All these considerations are implementation considerations. How are you going to do the widgets? How are you going to do the holistic land management? How are you going to implement a new government policy, right? And so implementation is really one way to think of implementation as design of all the steps. Remember we talked about the design of a camping trip, right? Well, shoot, you just go camping, right? No. Well, I mean, yeah, you could, or you could design your camping trip, as we talked about on previous recordings on the same series. So, one way to think about implementation, you could either take a kind of design-heavy approach to implementation and say, let's design to the very best we can every single step that's going to be taken in the process of implementing the solution. Or, you can take a very different approach and say, look, we're just going to design the rudiments of the solution, but we're going to leave implementation up to the local implementers, right? The local solutionaries who are in the implementation game, right? Some people like to focus on design, other people like to volunteer for implementation of solutions that they love, etc. So you can either leave it, give them a lot of leeway, or design it very precisely. And that's a balance, and that in and of itself needs to be designed. That balance needs to be designed intentionally. Or if you don't design it intentionally, it's going to come out however a bunch of factors play out that you haven't designed for, or haven't measured properly, right? Anyway, it's just a really interesting, spectrum of shades of gray between, essentially complete design. Imagine, a German factory that's producing the same product the same way year after year. German, pound cake, for example, or butter cookies or whatever, right? You've got a factory where butter comes in by the truckload, bulk flour comes in less frequently, and sugar and so on, and out come these cookies, and they're packaged in the same way every year, because it's a consumer product, and the consumer likes to see the same thing over and over. The implementation is essentially automatic at that point. From the HR department with its hiring and firing policies and training policies and food safety policies, food safety is extremely serious. The standards are very high, very stringent, and implementation, you don't just change that from one week to the next, because they'd have to redesign their whole process around it. And that's kind of the point, is a lot of these, apparently constraining factors are actually scaffolding for designing implementation systems into the plan, so that there's very little left to chance. You know, that's kind of the dream of such factories as the one I described in Germany. The point is that you design so much of the process and so many of the details of implementation that implementation the day of is virtually automatic, right?
Yeah, an analogy comes to mind, and one that we've talked about before, and that is of pregnancy and giving birth, right? You have the 3 trimesters, and then you have the birth, right? But the birth isn't like an additional trimester or quarter or whatever, right? It's not another phase, right? You have the 3 phases, and then
Right.
as a part of the natural process, the birth takes place at the end of the 3rd trimester.
And if I'm not interrupting, to the extent that the first 3 phases were done properly, right? And the metaphor is, or the analogy is that, you know, the first 3 phases are designed properly, including design implementation, then the implementation goes smoothly. It's not necessarily totally painless or instantaneous,
Yeah,
but at least
somebody's still sweating it out, right? You're going to build a building, right? Everything's designed down to the detail, you know, and including the entire construction process and the construction site and everything, right? But somebody's still going to sweat it out. But other than that, you know, the brain power behind it has already been done.
yeah, totally,
Or has already been exercised.
And you know, I want to actually mention one other connection that implementation has with another stage, which is modeling and optimization. To the point that you've modeled out every stage of implementation. It's predicted,
yep.
predictable, designed for. Procedures are designed to, you know, manage for that. You know, voila. So basically, day of, as few surprises as possible. Again, to quote a very wise woman, prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
Yeah, I mean, an obvious example is an assembly line for an in an automobile factory. Well, not only is the vehicle designed, right, and redesigned, and you know, and all the tests are designed, right, the assembly line itself is designed, and the whole process, and all of the, you know, so at the end of it all, yes, energy is expended in the implementation, but that's about it.
Yeah, totally, exactly. So it's
but in any case, but the implementation serves as the goal, right? Or at least it serves as the focal point in order for the goal to be achieved. And that focus drives the whole process. And it's there in every step of the way.
Yeah, totally. And you know, one thing that occurred to me is that blockchain can be enormously valuable for implementation purposes and design for implementation in terms of, you know, automatic triggers for contractual events, and for auditing and for tracking, and ultimately, you know, lubrication for a world that works. I think lubrication is a key concept here. You know, if it goes smoothly, not just automatically, but smoothly, right, without causing harm and without, you know, an unrealistic expenditure of effort. Anyway, it's just really cool stuff. So I just wanted to really kick off the topic of implementation, maybe we can talk for a minute or so about, tools for implementation, social networking tools, blockchain tools, simulation and tracking tools. For example, the project Sistema Táctico I did for Cemex, or led for Cemex, to optimize their operational planning. At the end of every month, the head of the company, Lorenzo Zambrano, requested to see any differences between the optimal plan that our system automatically designed, speaking of implementation, and what actually happened. He wanted to know how well was the company performing relative to the plan. And if there were any discrepancies that were significant, he wanted to know why, right? So anyway, that's, a key part of the implementation is the tracking. And, checking is what was designed for actually implemented. And if not, why not? Now, in the case of the modeling and optimization system for Cemex, the optimal solution was generated through an automatic process, provided sufficient input data, and accuracy of the same. And then, the solution came out, and then it was just a matter of execution. There's a difference between implementation, where you've got leeway, and execution, where you have less leeway, right? Implementation versus execution, two different things. Anyway, I think we're hitting upon all the key concepts here. It's an area that we admittedly have not spent a lot of time thinking about. Oh my goodness, in the conversational domain, ideation, woof, we're all over that. Design, all over that. Modeling and optimization, all over that. Implementation is an area where we need help. We need help across all areas. But this is one of them where there's tremendous room for opportunity for growth. So anyway, I'm going to go on mute, and please take your time, Michael. Very important topic, and we haven't really been talking that long. Not that we need to, fill up the space.
Yeah, you're right. It's not something that we've spent a whole lot of time talking about, and yet it's always been mapped as being a part of, the process, or sort of the terminus, point of the process, which is obvious, right? It's like taking the blueprints to the construction site and then erecting the building. But I don't have too much more to say about it at this time.
Okay, fair enough. Well, why don't we leave it at that for now, and really welcome your well thought out comments, questions. We really love to hear from everyone. So thanks so much. Thank you, Michael, so much. Great work today, as always. And thank you all for listening and participating. In addition to your listening, which is a form of participation, and thank you for that. And also those of you who choose to take the next step in participation. All right. Well, have a great, I guess now coming upon early evening for you. It's the wee hours of the morning for me. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks so much, Michael. Thanks, everyone.
See you in the next one. Thanks.
See you in the next one.